Jason, before we talk at all about anything that you reacted to from the draft, I have to ask you about an event that occurred this morning on day 2 of the draft.
Yes.
Our hotel is literally a 4-minute walk from Bridgestone Arena, and you and Sam Cosentino had a car sent to the hotel to drive you to the arena.
Listen.
Please explain.
Listen, it's 372 meters, according to my phone app. It's downhill on the way down, but it was 105 degrees this morning. So I hear what I know where you're going with this, that it's just a bad look for us svelte media members, especially when I stretched and stuff in the morning before I left the hotel. But yes, we got in a car service ordered by Sam Cosentino. I just tag along.
I do have to say, I heard Sam was responsible for this.
100%.
You should point out you were in your suits.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was dressed like this. It was too hot.
Yeah. That's, they call people who work in production and tech, they call us poodles on air. That encourages them calling us poodles.
Yeah, well, I would have been a puddle if I had to walk this morning. So.
All right. So 2 days the draft is done. Just initial, when someone says to you 2023 draft, what's going to grab you? What's the first thing you're going to think of?
First thing that's going to come to mind, reflection, no trades in the first round.
Yeah.
I can't recall for as long as I've been in the game that they're
2007, first time in 16 years.
So first time in 16 years. And how many trades were that year? Do you recall? Did you get it? Or
I just know there were nothing in the first round. Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And so I made the statement last night on air that the depth of the first 45 kids, let's say, on teams' lists, it was almost like a round and a half. Like it wasn't just the first round, if you will. It's like a first round and a half. That's how deep the quality went. So I didn't think people saw the value in making too many trades because they valued the list so much. That was my first takeaway.
Yeah.
It was my very first takeaway. My second takeaway was talking about trades. And they're not going to be happy with me when I bring it up, but having Simashev go to Arizona at 6,
yeah.
I believe that pick could have been made somewhere else in the first round for sure. Call it Nashville's pick. So,
okay, 15.
Okay, so Trotzy, as you know, and David were trying to trade up in the first round, and Arizona could have been a target. I'm speculating here. I'm sure they called everybody in the top 10, to say. So that could have been a deal that could have been made there. But conversely, Arizona stuck to their guns. They went off their list. And their timeline, Elliotte, is different, right? They've got so many prospects coming through. They don't really need more draft capital. Like, sooner than later, Arizona is going to have all these guys drop on their lap. They're not going to have room to sign them all.
Arizona, to me, is really interesting because they did something that a lot of people aren't doing right now. One is Russians. Like, everybody they drafted was over 6 feet tall. I think San Jose did the same thing. I think everyone they drafted was over 6'1". To me, that's the Vegas effect, the Colorado effect. But they went for height and they went for Russians at a time a lot of people are nervous about taking Russians.
So my theory on that is that they felt, given their circumstance with how flush they are with the prospect pool, that they could get out ahead of some of these other teams that maybe were going to sit on a guy later, and they might have valued him as much as Arizona did, but they're like, you know what, we've already got all these prospects coming, we're going to take a run at all these guys because we can.
Yep.
Because we can. But it's fascinating to me. Like today, they go to Daniel Booth at 12, and so you got a 6'5" guy who's on projection he could be a 1 in the NHL. He actually could be a 1. I think he leans more 2, 2F, centerman. But, he's got all kinds of skill. But there's a lot of projection there compared to the other people drafted around him. So, yeah, that was fascinating. I don't think they drafted a North American until they took the goalie from the U.S. team, Musser.
I don't have it in front of me, but
it feels like that.
Yeah,
anyways.
Yeah. They had a very unique draft.
Yeah, European heavy. And for our listeners, the timeline, as you know, is 4 years on those guys.
Yes, you get them for 4 years.
So
CHL players 2 years, USHL or NCAA players 4 years, or until their class is done, and overseas 4 years. Like, the great story about that is the last time the CBA was done, the full one, in 2013, the players who were negotiating told me that right before they got the deal done, one of the last things the NHL asked for was European players. Was 2 years at the time. They asked for 4.
That's interesting. And did they give you the reason why they?
I don't know why they waited on that until the last minute, but that was one of the things that definitely happened.
Well, they get to play in those pro leagues over there and earn a pro earning in Europe, a lot of them, before they come over here. Like even the young guys that get drafted, they're like the Axel Sandin Pelicans.
Yep.
That kid played 114 hockey games this year.
That's a lot of hockey, man.
Like, you could go on a full NHL run, win the Stanley Cup. You could go 7 games in each round of the Stanley Cup. You're not even going to get that many games.
No, you're at 110.
So
82 and 28.
He played the Helenka. He played the World Juniors. He played 4 nations, 5 nations, World Under-18s, SHL games. Like, it's crazy. It's interesting. So, I mean, maybe I'm just spitballing here, but they've got so many things going on in Europe, they might want to own those guys a little longer.
Okay, so let's look at this. Let's go through the first round, okay? Okay, we don't even need to talk about Chicago, okay? Leo Carlson, 2 from Anaheim. Initial reaction.
Not shocked. Not the least bit shocked. I was splitting hairs on Fantilli and Carlson at 2. Listening to Pat Verbeek talk to you about it, it made perfectly good sense to me anyways. He's different than Fantilli. Fantilli plays more of a quick and fast game. Carlson is moving quicker than people believe he's moving. He's actually going, but he's more cerebral with it, like kind of like Barkov in Florida. You don't know that he's moving as fast as he is, but he is. Where McKinnon, he's darting,
Somebody told me that Verbeek had a really visceral reaction when it was brought up internally that Carlson wasn't a good skater. Like, he got really upset about that.
Yeah, I can see that. He's a good skater. There's no problem with skating.
Yeah.
He's agile, he's big, and so not surprised. Fantastic kid, great character. So was Fantilli, so I'm splitting hairs there, but just a different player. That's all.
Yep.
He slows the game down a little bit more. Fantilli will drive people off their blue line, off the rush, where Carlson might take on a check, absorb contact to make a play. Okay, so one guy's driving the play off because they have to respect the speed a little bit more. So he'll catch Gavin Brindley at Michigan coming late. Carlson will bring people to him, absorb contact, and make a play. They're just a little different, that's all.
Guessing, what tipped the scales for Carlson?
Well, we were really excited about his creativity, his hockey sense. I think there's a potential for him to really be a dominant player at both ends of the ice. We liked him, especially seeing him at the World Championships play center, and so it kind of became a tipping point for him.
Do we pencil him in for next season in Anaheim? Do we pencil him in next season in Anaheim?
Well, you know what? We're going to kind of go through the process with him. We'll have to see.
Thanks very much, Pat.
Okay, yep.
Dave? Did you think there was any chance some combination of Bedard, Carlson, Fantilli, Smith wasn't going 1, 2, 3, 4?
No.
Okay.
I thought that was going to be it. I'll throw Leonard in that mix because I'll go down to 5. I think that if Smith was available at 5, I think Montreal would have pivoted there and maybe went Smith instead of Reinbacher, and then we might be even having a different conversation in that regard when it came to 6 with Simashev in Arizona.
See, I'll be the first one to admit, when I don't like giving draft grades. I don't see these kids. I know what a cement head I was at 18, and you can really change between 18 and 23. Like, people say to me, who's your winner and loser of the draft? And I'm like, I haven't seen these guys play. And you know what? 95% of the people that argue about it on Twitter, they have no clue about it either. But, in Montreal, I saw the Canadiens fans, they were upset. Like, did that pick surprise you at all?
No, it didn't surprise me at all. Again, I mean, so look what they did in the build-up to the draft. They made the deal with Colorado. If you look at what they have coming through the prospect pool, so Newhook's coming in. You got Owen Beck on the horizon. You've got obviously what they already have there with Suzuki and Doc. They've got all these other pieces. So you and I both know, because we'll do a trade deadline next year, and we'll do it 3-4 years from now, and a guy like Reinbacher's name comes up. He's so valuable. Those big right shot 6'4" defensemen who can produce better than secondary offense. There's some projection involved here. I'm not shocked by that pick. I'm not shocked at all by that pick. It still fits a need. Was he the best player on my list available at that slot? No. I would have went Leonard. After Smith was gone, if I'm running the table for Sportsnet, I go to my next best player. I'm not deviating from our list. It was Leonard for me. But Reinbacher was not far behind there.
Okay. I love Leonard. I think that's a great pick for Washington. I think they're going to be really happy for a long time. I don't want to. We've talked about him a lot, so I don't talk about him anymore. Now that you know what you know about Mishkov in Philadelphia,
Yeah.
so he comes to Philly. They hide it. They meet him here. They don't. I don't think initially they believed he really wanted to play for them, but he convinced them, and they're like, how much like that kind of subterfuge when you hear it. Like, what do you think?
Well, the whole season was stealth on him, wasn't it? I think there's a lot of things that there's probably a documentary in the making somewhere down the line, because I believe now, knowing what I know after that meeting, especially, like they shut down the facility. That didn't actually happen.
I actually did that on Twitter because I had two people who sent me that tweet on Friday night.
Okay.
And they said to me that they shut down the facility so Mishkov could get in there. And I asked Briere that on air, and he laughed, and he said, that's not true. It's actually a wild coincidence. That was on the Sunday, but it actually happened that they did sneak him in on the Friday where nobody could see him. But there was a conspiracy theory that they shut it down that day to get him in there. But
it's a well-earned conspiracy theory, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, because a lot of people heard it.
Yeah, a lot of people heard it, and there's been so many moving parts with the prospect, that wouldn't surprise us, right? So the whole thing there with Philly, or any team that might come out of the woodwork later and say that they had a meeting off-site with him, none of it surprises me with that whole scenario there. I think the whole thing has been a finely tuned journey, well orchestrated by his management team. And I do believe this, though, Elliotte, that he genuinely only wanted to – they can tell me whatever they want to tell me. I think he only wanted to play for a certain category, like certain teams. I think he only wanted to go to certain cities. Philly's obviously one.
With the seventh selection of the draft, the Flyers are proud to select from St. Petersburg in the KHL, Matvei Mishkov.
So that's one of the big storylines as we entered this draft. How far would Matvei Mishkov slide? Again, he was right there with Connor Bedard as far as the rankings were concerned a year ago. We all understand the geopolitical situation. We all understand the KHL contract situation. He might not be able to come to North America for a number of years, but ultimately the Flyers say we'll bear those risks and we will take him at 7.
There's no question in my mind that they did that. And you know what? Some people don't like that. You know, the one thing I'll say is when you're an agent and your client tells you to do something, sometimes you got to do things that people won't like, but that's your job. Like, I'm curious, when you were working for teams, how often did you have an agent say to your team, don't draft this guy, he doesn't want to come here?
More than a handful of times.
So it happens a bit.
It happens.
Now, would your GM ever say, screw it, I'm taking the key? They don't, because I know some people are like, they don't dictate to us, we dictate to them. Like, what were your GMs like?
Depended on the slot. It depended on the draft slot. You know, like if it was in this scenario here, it would not have likely. Let me preface it by saying this. Depending on where you are in the cycle of your big team, okay, and then depending on where you are with your depth chart, okay, now your GM might be in that mode. It's like, honestly, it's the NHL. You're not going to tell me what to do. Your GM has 2 years left on his deal. You got middling depth. You're sort of a playoff team. That changes the scope of that conversation. altogether. Like, strategy has to change. He's not going to be happy about it, or she. They're not going to be happy about it, because nobody at that highest level in the world of this game wants any 18-year-old kid and his management team to dictate.
100%.
Like, come on, you should just be foaming at the mouth to come and play, right? But it happens. I find that it happens more with, even over here with North Americans, with kids that are going to college.
Really?
Yeah, they're lukewarm about the selection process. That I'm happy to be drafted, but you get the feeling pretty early in the process, if you will, that you're happy, but I can tell you're not totally happy. We went through that with Hyman. When Hyman had that great year in Michigan, his senior year, he walked us to water right till March, saying he was going to be a Florida Panther, and at the end of the day, he had no intentions of being a Florida Panther.
On this podcast, you're not allowed to say anything negative about Zach Hyman, just so you know.
Well, I like Zach Hyman as a player. I'm just giving you an example. You set it up. I'm just following the lead.
I wanted to. So the other thing I wanted to ask you was, I really like something you said in the NHL Network on day 2, and you talked about Carolina. Like, teams have a type, and you said Carolina was drafting to type. Was there any team that you thought of over these 2 days who you said they did not draft a type?
Honestly, I thought that Toronto kind of were in the muddy middle compared to what they've done in the past.
Well, I think Tree Living wants
some more size there, I think.
Well, not only size, but like they want to be meaner. I think he thinks they're too docile. So I'm not surprised to hear you say that.
So that was one. But full disclosure, I was kind of curious anyway, so you're monitoring it a little bit differently, right? I was a little bit surprised. So Trotsy's coming into Nashville, and if you start to look at who they selected a lot of guys 5'11", like 3 or 4 guys 5'11" or shorter, that are burners, or like Kalen Lynn type guys that are, they play like their hair's on fire. They're really hard to play against. And I thought that was a little bit interesting, because their division specifically seems to be, you have to have some beef in that division to come out of it seems. But clearly there's a little bit of a changing of the guard there with size and speed that obviously Barry wants to have that in the group.
Okay, couple more for you. Number 1, player who went late that you said, actually, I know late in the first round you liked the Blues pick who went 25th, the captain of the Swedish team.
Oh, I love him, Stenberg.
I remember you were talking about him, but maybe somebody who went late that you said, boy, what a great late pick.
Can I check my notes for a sec here?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to talk about Stenberg though for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, I had him as a top 10 guy for me. And I got the next guy after this. But Stenberg, I had him as a top 10 guy. He's been the captain of that Swedish team. Great day, great weekend for the country of Sweden.
Really good night.
For a great couple of days, right? So, but this kid rips pucks from all over the place. Plays the game the right way, 3-zone heavy. He's kind of built like a fire hydrant. He's really hard to play against. He's like quick to small areas, and he's just hard to knock off pucks. I thought Nick Lardis was going to go a lot sooner.
So I remember he went 67th, I think, to Chicago.
Yeah.
And I think it was Sam who said, wait a sec, like, people are looking at this going, Nick Lardis was still available? So when you say his name, I think of that.
So Chicago, obviously Bedard. But then they went Oliver Moore out of the program. He's a burner. Yeah. And then you go to Nick Lardis, who's an elite skater. Like, honestly, he's the Elvis Stoico of this draft class. He's a beautiful skater. But he's a perimeter guy for the most part, plays the wing. But if you put him with somebody who's a play driver in the middle, can extend plays, he's going to go to work. So Lardis, I had him as like between 28 and 34 in my mind. So that's a guy that stands out for me. All
right, next year. We're already talking about next year.
Yeah. Macklin Celebrini.
So this year was the year of Bedard. Next year's the year of Celebrini.
The Yzerman kid's really good too, out of the U.S.
You know who's going to like that, even though he never listens to this podcast, is Dave Amber.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Dave Amber never listens to the podcast because he tells me I hear too much of you normally, so I can't listen to the podcast.
Right, yeah.
But he saw Cole Yzerman play probably about 6-7 years ago, and he is not like, he talks about Cole Yzerman more than he talks about his own wife and kids. He says, watch out for this Yzerman kid.
He's really good. Yeah, he wants the puck all the time. He's an alpha dog. Like, he wants it. Sometimes, like, he had the You know, he had the beaver tail going a little bit at the under 18s. You know, one of those guys that really wants it all the time. But he's elite. Macklin Celebrini would have been a top 10 pick in this draft. Like, he's that good. And this is a great draft.
So, and where does Yzerman play?
So he is at the under 17th. He's at the 17s this year, but played for the 18s at the Worlds. So he's at the U.S. National Team Development Program.
And Celebrini was at the Chicago Steel this year. Is he there next year?
As far as I know, as I sit here right now, that's where he's going to be, yes.
Okay.
The other kid that's on the horizon, though, the Hudson draft pick in Montreal.
He's got a brother, right?
He's got a brother, and he's a heck of a player, too.
And where's he playing?
He's eventually going to go to, he's at the program, U.S. National Team, so he's going to be at the U18s, but I believe he's also going to be U when he's done there. Now, his brother will be in Montreal by then, but he's another one.
All right. Thanks very much, my man. How do you feel?
Well, I feel like I've been talking to you too much this week, so I'm glad to get out of here.
You got a car taking you back to the hotel?
Yeah, it's uphill all the way.